A poor 7-year-old girl named Lily stood at the gate of Wonderland Park on Children's Day, holding her worn teddy bear tightly. Her small face was full of wonder as she looked at the colorful balloons floating in the air and listened to the cheerful music coming from the park. She longed to join the other children running inside with their parents, their faces bright with excitement. But Lily wasn't able to go in. She stood at the entrance, watching the magical rides spinning and soaring, wishing she could be part of it all. Lily was dressed in a faded yellow dress, which had once belonged to someone else. It was a hand-me-down from a church donation, and though it was too big for her, it was all she had. Her shoes were worn and her teddy bear had patches where the stuffing peeked through, but it was her most prized possession. It gave her comfort on days like these, when everything around her felt out of reach. Her mother, Grace, stood beside her, a tired look on her face. Grace, a single mother, had worked so hard just to get by. She had lost her job at the factory 3 months ago and was now doing cleaning jobs and washing dishes at a local diner. It was difficult, and the money she earned was barely enough to pay for their tiny apartment. But she tried to make life as normal as possible for Lily. "I'll get us some popcorn with these last few coins," Grace said, her voice soft but full of love. "Then we can at least enjoy watching from here." Lily nodded and smiled bravely, trying to hide the sadness she felt inside. She was used to pretending that everything was okay, even though her heart ached at the thought of all the fun she was missing out on. She had learned to be strong, to hold back her tears when things were tough, and to appreciate the little moments like this one when her mother was with her. As Grace hurried off to buy the popcorn, Lily stood at the gate, her eyes glued to the rides in the distance. The sound of children laughing and shouting in excitement made her wish she could be with them. But she knew she couldn't. She understood that her mother was doing everything she could, even if it didn't always feel like enough. She could see how hard Grace worked, and she knew that her mom loved her more than anything in the world. But sometimes, Lily couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to have a life like the other children in the park. Children who didn't have to worry about money or what to eat for dinner. Sometimes, Lily wished she didn't have to pretend everything was okay. But she didn't want to disappoint her mom, so she kept those thoughts to herself, pushing them away just like she always did. Lily pressed her little nose against the gate, her hand clutching her teddy bear tightly. "Maybe next year," she whispered to herself, hoping that one day things would be different. Lily was still standing at the gate of Wonderland Park, watching the other children play, when her eyes caught sight of something that made her stop in her tracks. There, standing in the VIP line, was a man and a little girl. The man was tall, dressed in a dark suit, and seemed to be in a hurry. But it wasn't him that made Lily stare, it was the little girl next to him. The girl was dressed in a beautiful blue dress with a white ribbon around her waist. Her hair was dark brown and curled perfectly around her shoulders, and she had a bright smile on her face. But what really caught Lily's attention was how much the girl looked like her. It was as if Lily was looking into a mirror, seeing herself but in a different world. Lily's heart started to race as she studied the girl more closely. They had the same round face, the same button nose, and the same wide hazel eyes. Even their smile looked the same. But what really made Lily freeze was the missing tooth in the girl's smile. It was exactly like the one Lily had, the same spot in her mouth where her tooth had fallen out a few weeks ago. And the birthmark near the girl's right eyebrow, it looked just like the one Lily had too. Lily couldn't believe it. She blinked a few times, trying to understand what she was seeing. Could this girl really look so much like her? She had never seen anyone who looked like her before. What was going on? Without thinking, Lily stepped closer. She had to know. She had to find out why this girl looked just like her. With her teddy bear clutched tightly in one hand, she took a deep breath and walked up to the man and his daughter. "Excuse me, sir," Lily said, her voice small but clear. She was nervous, but her curiosity was stronger than the fear. "Why does your daughter look exactly like me?" The man, who had been looking down at his phone, froze. His head snapped up, and his piercing blue eyes widened when he saw Lily standing there. He blinked a few times as if trying to process what she had just said. His phone slipped from his fingers and clattered to the ground, but he didn't seem to notice. He just stared at Lily for a long moment, completely speechless. It was the first time Lily had ever seen an adult look so surprised, and it made her nervous. Sophie, the little girl next to the man, turned around when she heard Lily's voice. She looked at Lily with a puzzled expression, her mouth forming an O of surprise. "Daddy," Sophie whispered, tugging at the man's sleeve. "She looks like me." William Andrews, the Billionaire CEO, stared at Lily for a few more moments, his mind racing. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. The resemblance between Lily and his daughter, Sophie, was undeniable. It was as if he was looking at a younger version of Sophie, or maybe even a twin. But that didn't make sense. Sophie was his only child. Who was this little girl? Who are you? William finally managed to ask, his voice sounding strangely hoarse. He looked down at Lily and then at Sophie and back at Lily again. Where are your parents? Lily stood there holding her teddy bear tight, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this reaction. But she knew she had to answer him. My name is Lily. Lily Matthews, she said, her voice shaky but polite. My mom went to buy popcorn. She said we couldn't go into the park today but we could watch from here. William's face grew pale as he heard her last name. He repeated it to himself quietly, Matthews? His mind raced as he tried to understand the strange situation in front of him. Could Lily really be connected to him somehow? Lily had no idea what was going on, but she could tell from the way the man was looking at her that something important was happening. She just didn't understand what. William stood still, staring at Lily as if she were a ghost from his past. The resemblance between her and Sophie was uncanny, too much for him to ignore. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it. How could this be? His only daughter was Sophie. He'd never been told about another child, especially one who looked exactly like her. As he struggled to understand the situation, Sophie, his daughter, tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, she looks like me. Is she my sister? She asked, her voice full of innocent curiosity. Her eyes moved from Lily to William, waiting for an explanation. William felt a knot tighten in his chest. Sophie had no idea how true her words might be. For a moment he felt lost. The confusion was overwhelming. He looked at Lily again, this time noticing the way she held her teddy bear tightly in her arms, her eyes wide with wonder and a touch of fear. The missing tooth, the birthmark, the same smile, everything about her reminded him of Sophie. William slowly crouched down to Lily's level, trying to steady his thoughts. Lily, he said softly, how old are you? His voice shook slightly as he spoke, trying to keep his emotions in check. I'm 7, Lily answered shyly. I'll be 8 in January. A cold chill ran through William. He knew exactly when Sophie had been born. His mind flashed back to the time he and Grace had been together. They had been close, very close, before their relationship had ended suddenly. The pain from that time still lingered in him, though he had tried to bury it. He hadn't known about Lily, Grace never told him. He had no idea that she had kept this secret from him all these years. Just then a voice called out in the distance, breaking the tense silence. Lily. It was Grace. She appeared through the crowd, her face filled with panic as she hurried toward her daughter. When she saw Lily standing with William and Sophie, her steps faltered. Her eyes locked on William, and in that instant years of unspoken history seemed to crash down on them. William stood up quickly as Grace approached, his eyes never leaving hers. There was a long, uncomfortable silence between them. Their gazes were full of questions, pain, and regret. Grace's face was pale, her mouth pressed into a tight line. She had never expected to see him again, let alone here, with Lily. Lily, sweetheart, Grace said, her voice trembling slightly. What are you doing here? I told you to stay by the gate. Lily looked up at her mother with wide eyes, then back at William and Sophie. She felt the tension between the adults and instinctively took a small step back, clutching her teddy bear even tighter. She didn't understand why her mother looked so upset or why the man was staring at her so intently. William finally broke the silence. Grace, he said quietly, his voice rough. I didn't know about Lily. Why didn't you tell me? Grace took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. She had so many emotions swirling inside her, and the last thing she wanted was to explain everything here in front of Lily. But William's question hung in the air, demanding an answer. She turned her gaze to Lily, her heart heavy with a mixture of guilt and regret. Grace started, but her voice faltered. She had no idea how to explain the secret she had kept for so long. William's eyes softened, and he stepped closer to Grace. Grace, is she really mine? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the answer would change everything. Grace nodded slowly, her eyes filled with sorrow. Yes, she said quietly. Lily is your daughter. The truth hung in the air between them, and William's heart ached as the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. As Grace stood there, the weight of the moment hung heavily between her and William. The years of silence, the questions, and the pain that had built up in her heart slowly began to resurface. It had been so long since she had seen him, and even longer since they had shared any part of their lives. Now here they were, face to face with so many things unsaid. Grace's mind flashed back to the time when things had been different. She remembered the early days of her relationship with William. They had met when she was still in college, a scholarship student from a small town, and he had been everything she had ever dreamed of. Handsome, smart, and full of ambition, William had made her feel like she was the most important person in the world. Their love had felt perfect, as if nothing could stand in their way. They had spent countless hours together, talking about their hopes for the future and making plans for a life that seemed full of endless possibilities. William had promised her that they would build a future together, no matter where life took them. Grace had believed him with all her heart. But things changed when William's family became involved. His father, who had always been a powerful figure in the business world, had never approved of Grace. He saw her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in the world of wealth and influence that William was destined to inherit. William had tried to fight for their relationship, but the pressure from his family was overwhelming. His father had insisted that he marry someone from the right social background, someone who could fit into the life he was being groomed for. One day, out of the blue, Grace had received a call from William's assistant, informing her that William had gotten engaged to a woman named Victoria Hamilton, a socialite who came from a wealthy family. The engagement announcement had hit her like a punch to the stomach. She had no idea that William was even considering it, let alone making it official. Grace's heart had shattered. She tried to reach out to him to talk about what had happened, but William was distant. He didn't answer her calls or return her messages. He seemed to have moved on, swept away by the life his family had planned for him. Grace, feeling betrayed and heartbroken, made the difficult decision to leave. She disappeared without a trace, thinking that William had chosen the life of wealth and status over their love. "I thought you had moved on," Grace said quietly, her voice full of regret. "When I saw the announcement about your engagement to Victoria, I knew I couldn't be a part of that world. I thought I was just a passing memory to you and I couldn't handle that. So I left. I thought it was for the best." William's eyes softened as he listened to her words. He had never known how deeply Grace had been hurt by his actions, or how he had unintentionally pushed her away. He had been caught up in his family's expectations, and he hadn't realized the pain it caused her. "I never wanted to hurt you, Grace," William said quietly. "I didn't choose that life. My father pushed me into it and I tried to fight it. But it was hard. After you left, I thought I had lost you forever. I never knew about Lily. I never knew about any of this." Grace's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she whispered. "But I couldn't keep this from you anymore. Lily deserves to know her father." For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them, the weight of their past settling over them. The misunderstandings, the pain, and the lost years hung in the air, but there was also a sense of something else, something they had both forgotten. The possibility of a future they had once dreamed of, a future that had been lost but maybe, just maybe, could still be found. Lily stood beside her mother, Grace, her small hand clutching her worn teddy bear tightly. She couldn't fully understand what was happening, but she felt something special in the air. The man who had been so surprised to see her, William, seemed different. There was something in his eyes when he looked at her, something that made her feel safe even though she didn't know why. As the day went on, Lily couldn't stop thinking about him. He was so tall and kind, and he made her feel like she mattered. As they walked around Wonderland Park, Lily found herself looking at Sophie, William's daughter. Sophie was just a little older than Lily, and they seemed to get along perfectly. They laughed together, ran around the park, and even played with the same rides. Lily was amazed at how much they had in common. Sophie's face, her eyes, even the way she smiled, it was almost like looking at her own reflection. Lily was starting to realize that she might have found someone special in William. She didn't know him very well yet, but she liked the way he made her feel like she was important. She had never known her father, and the idea that William might be her father seemed like a dream. The thought of having a dad, someone who cared about her, filled her with hope. Sophie and Lily played together on the carousel, giggling and shouting with excitement as the horses spun around. They were both so full of joy, yet Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. They were like sisters, as if they had known each other forever. And William, he watched them both with a soft smile on his face. There was something in his expression, something that made Lily feel like she had finally found the family she had always longed for. As the day passed, Lily couldn't help but notice how William looked at her, his eyes full of wonder. It was as though he was seeing her for the first time, as if he was slowly realizing something he had never known before. When he knelt down to her level and spoke to her, his voice was gentle and kind. He didn't seem like a stranger anymore. He seemed like someone who wanted to be there for her. "Are you having fun, Lily?" William asked, his voice full of warmth. Lily smiled and nodded. "Yes. I'm having so much fun with Sophie," she said, her face lighting up. "She's just like me." William looked at the two girls, their faces so similar, their laughter so alike. He couldn't help but feel a deep ache in his heart. The bond between them was undeniable, and he realized that Lily wasn't just a stranger to him. She was his daughter, a part of him, someone he had missed for all these years. He had always wanted a family, but he never expected it to be like this. Unexpected, but so right. Despite the tension with Grace, William found himself slowly bonding with the two girls. He spent time talking with Lily, listening to her stories and watching her interact with Sophie. It was clear that they had a connection, something that went beyond mere coincidence. Their identical features stirred a deep longing in William to be a part of Lily's life, to make up for all the lost time. As the day came to an end and the park began to quiet down, William couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. He had never imagined that a day at the amusement park could change so much. The girls, Sophie and Lily, had both become a part of his heart, and he wanted to be there for them. He wanted to make things right, to be the father Lily deserved. In that moment, William knew that he couldn't walk away again. The bond between him and Lily was too strong, and he was ready to fight for it. After the emotional conversation, Grace stood there, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She had never imagined that she would be in this position, standing with William, a man she once loved, and discovering that he was Lily's father. For years she had kept Lily away from him, convinced that it was better for them both. But now, seeing how much Lily seemed to want a relationship with William, Grace couldn't deny the truth anymore. William's eyes were filled with hope, and he spoke with sincerity. "Grace, I know I've made mistakes, but I want to be in Lily's life. I can't change the past, but I can be here for her now. Please, let me have a chance to be the father she deserves." Grace felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, but also a flicker of hope. She had spent so many years raising Lily on her own, doing everything she could to provide for her. She had never needed anyone, especially not William. But now, seeing the bond between him and Lily, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe they could all have something better together. After a long pause, Grace finally nodded. "All right," she said quietly. "Just for today. We'll go to Wonderland Park and spend the day together. But we need to take it slow. I'm not ready for anything more." William's face lit up with gratitude, and he gave Grace a small, understanding nod. "Thank you, Grace. I promise I won't push. We'll take it one step at a time." And so, they all made their way to Wonderland Park, an unexpected reunion that felt both strange and familiar. Sophie and Lily were excited, their faces glowing with anticipation. The two girls, who had so much in common, immediately started talking and laughing as they walked through the entrance, holding hands like they had known each other for years. Grace and William walked behind them, a little distance apart, both lost in their own thoughts. The tension between them was still there, but for the first time, there was also a sense of possibility. Maybe they could find a way to move past the mistakes of the past. At the park, the group enjoyed the sights and sounds of the amusement park. Sophie and Lily couldn't get enough of the carousel, and they rode it over and over, laughing as the colorful horses spun around. Grace and William stood on the sidelines, watching their daughters with a sense of wonder. "Look at them," Grace said quietly, her voice soft as she watched the girls. "They're like two peas in a pod." William nodded, his gaze fixed on Lily and Sophie. "I never thought I'd see this day," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "I never imagined I'd have a chance to be a part of her life. I lost so much time." Grace looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. "I didn't mean for you to miss out on her," she replied. "But I had to protect her. I couldn't risk her getting hurt." William's expression softened, and he stepped closer to Grace. "I understand. I've made mistakes too. But I'm here now, and I want to make it right." The two of them stood there, watching their daughters, the distance between them beginning to shrink. It wasn't easy, and there was still so much to figure out, but for the first time in years, Grace felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild the family they had once dreamed of. For the rest of the day, they spent time together as a family, sharing simple moments of joy and laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a step forward. And for Grace and William, it was the beginning of something new, something that had been lost but might just be found again. After spending the day together at Wonderland Park, something had shifted between Grace and William. There was still tension, but there was also a sense of possibility. William had watched Lily and Sophie, the two girls who looked so much alike, bonding with each passing moment. He couldn't deny the deep ache in his chest, the longing to be a father to Lily, to be the kind of dad she deserved. That evening, as they walked back to the car, William turned to Grace, his heart heavy with regret. He knew it would take time to rebuild their relationship, but he couldn't keep his feelings inside any longer. "Grace," he said softly, his voice serious but full of sincerity. I need you to know something. I regret not being there for Lily all these years. I should have known. I should have fought harder to be in her life. I want to be a part of her life now if you'll let me. Grace looked at him, her heart torn. She had spent so many years alone with Lily, and the idea of opening up to William again was scary. But as she looked at him, she could see the genuine pain in his eyes. He wasn't just saying words, he meant it. I don't know if I can just forget everything that happened, Grace said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. We've both been through so much. But Lily deserves the chance to know you, and maybe we can give this a try. For her. William smiled, a small but heartfelt smile. I'll do whatever it takes, Grace. I just want to make it right. Over the next few months they began to rebuild their relationship. William started spending more time with Lily, slowly earning her trust. He would pick her up from school, take her to the park, and spend time doing simple things that fathers and daughters do. Lily, at first hesitant and unsure, soon began to warm to him. She could see how much he cared, and with each passing day the bond between them grew stronger. William also offered his help in ways Grace hadn't expected. He helped her with things she never thought she could ask him for, assisting with bills, offering support with Lily's education, and even finding ways to help Grace with her work. It wasn't just financial support, it was emotional support too. For the first time in years, Grace felt like she wasn't carrying the weight of everything on her own. As the weeks went by, Grace found herself slowly letting go of the bitterness she had held onto for so long. She started to see William in a new light, not just as the man who had hurt her, but as someone who was truly trying to make amends. He wasn't the same person he had been years ago. He was more thoughtful, more understanding. And maybe, just maybe, they could have a future together. One evening, after a quiet dinner with Lily, William took Grace's hand and looked into her eyes. I've been thinking, he said. I know we've both been through a lot, but I can't ignore how I feel. I've never stopped loving you, Grace. I don't want to waste any more time. I want to be with you. And I want us to build a future, not just as a couple, but as a family. Grace felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had never expected this moment to come, but here it was. The pain of the past still lingered, but she could see the sincerity in William's eyes. She smiled softly, a sense of peace settling over her. I never stopped loving you either, she whispered. But we'll take it slow. Let's see where this goes. In that moment, they both knew that the path forward wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, but there was also hope. They weren't just rebuilding a relationship. They were building a new life together, not just for themselves but for Lily too. And as a family they would face whatever came next, united and stronger than before. Months passed, and the changes in Elena, Alexander, Olivia, and Sophie's lives began to settle into a new normal. What started as an unexpected meeting at the park had grown into something more, something real. They had become a family, though not in the way they had originally imagined. But as time went on, they found that their blended family was stronger than any of them had expected. At first, Elena had been hesitant. She wasn't sure if she could accept that Alexander would be in Olivia's life. She had spent years raising Olivia on her own, doing everything she could to give her the best life possible. But as she watched Olivia and Sophie grow closer, sharing laughter and bonding over small things, Elena began to realize that this wasn't just about her. It was about what was best for Olivia. Olivia too was adjusting to this new reality. Having a father in her life was something she had never dreamed of. For so long, it had just been her and her mom, and she had grown used to that. But now, with Alexander's gentle guidance and Sophie's company, she felt a sense of completeness that she hadn't known was missing. Olivia and Sophie were inseparable, their bond growing stronger every day. They shared everything, books, toys, secrets, and dreams, just like real sisters. And for Olivia, the feeling of having someone who looked like her, who understood her, was a gift she had never imagined. Elena slowly began to accept that Alexander was not just a part of Olivia's life, but a part of their family. The pain of the past was still there, but it no longer held her back. She saw how Alexander treated Olivia with love and care, how he made her feel special and important. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of doubt, but she realized that they were moving forward together, step by step, with no need to look back. The family moved into a new home, a fresh start for all of them. The house was bigger, with enough space for everyone to have their own rooms and a cozy place to gather. As they settled in, the atmosphere was filled with the joy of new beginnings. Olivia's room was decorated with soft pastel colors, and Sophie's room, right next door, was filled with laughter and toys. The house felt full of life, full of the love that had grown between them. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Elena looked around at the people she had once believed she would never be able to trust again. Alexander, sitting beside her, smiled at Olivia, who was telling a funny story about her day at school. Sophie laughed along, her eyes shining with joy. In that moment, Elena realized just how much had changed. They were a family, a real family, and the bond they shared was something that had grown out of love, forgiveness, and time. Olivia, feeling the warmth of her new family, looked up at her mother and whispered, "Mom, I'm really happy." Her words were simple, but they spoke volumes about how much she had come to accept and love her new family. Elena smiled and hugged Olivia tightly. "I'm happy too, sweetheart. I'm so glad we're together." The sense of fulfillment and happiness that had been missing from their lives for so long was finally there. As they faced the future together, Elena, Alexander, Olivia, and Sophie knew that they had come through a journey of pain and uncertainty, but they had found something even more important: love and family. And now, together, they were ready to face whatever came next. As Elena sat in her new home, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and the warmth of her family, she couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. It all started with a simple question from Olivia, a poor little girl asking a billionaire why his daughter looked so much like her. At the time, Elena never imagined that one question would change everything. It had been a long, difficult journey, filled with uncertainty and pain. But now, looking at Olivia and Sophie, seeing the bond they shared, Elena realized that what had once seemed impossible had become a beautiful reality. Olivia now had a father who loved her and a sister who looked just like her. And for Elena, the family she had longed for was finally here. The past was not easy to forget, but Elena understood now that sometimes life had a way of leading them to unexpected joy. The pain of the past had made room for the happiness of the present. Their lives together were just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, Elena felt at peace. What started as a simple question had brought them the greatest gift of all: a family reunited, stronger than ever.